ever wondered, can you communicate directly with spirit guides, teachers, or non-physical consciousness, or even our higher selves? What would they tell us? My name is Kevin Moore, and since 2015, I started to practice a form of communication which is termed channeling. I have been interviewing experts on my talk show to find out, does life continue after we die? And can we communicate with those that have crossed over? With each expert I spoke to, they all had different ideas. Is there knowledge from the past which could be shared with the present moment? So I thought, why not just speak to the non-physical world directly through channelers around the world? And that's what I set out to do. They Call Us Channelers will take the viewers on a journey into the phenomena known as channeling. And my main goal with this docuseries is to bring a new understanding and awareness to channeling by looking within ourselves and asking, is it truly possible that we can all use this innate ability?
Yeah, well, I'm Kerr Smith, and most of the time I'm an actor. But recently I've just been starting this new journey in my life. Well, it's it's an old journey and it's a new journey. It's a new journey publicly. It's an old journey privately. But yeah, into this whole consciousness, awareness community.
So just sort of, focusing on your career to begin with, I think that's important just to talk about where you've been up to. How many years have you been acting for now?
23 years now. 23
years. And when you look back to getting your break on Dawson's Creek, how did that come about? And can you relate anything into the idea of that, you made that happen in a sense? You attracted that?
Yeah, when I was first starting out back in the mid to late 90s, I was in New York, and I was very conscious of thoughts create things kind of mentality. I had a specific process that I used where I would have things around my house or jewelry that I would wear that would remind me of what I need to keep my thoughts on in order to, manifest what I wanted to happen. And I finally moved out to California in 1998, I guess it was, 97, somewhere in there. And I had nowhere to live, no job, nothing. Just my girlfriend and I just moved out there at the time. And I said to myself, there are two shows that are hot right now that I want to get on. One was Party of Five, and one was Dawson's Creek. Dawson's Creek had just aired their first half of season. They were a mid-season replacement, so they only did 10 episodes. And it's to me, even talking about this is unbelievable, but my first audition in California was for Party of Five. Now, I blew that one. I blew it pretty bad. Obviously, I didn't get that. But one of my other auditions was for Dawson's Creek, and look what happened. I was in Los Angeles for 7 weeks before I got hired on that show.
Isn't that incredible? You knew this is what you wanted, and even before that, you majored in business, mm-hmm. I believe. Was that at college?
Yeah. University of Vermont.
Yeah, but you decided that wasn't the path for you.
It wasn't. I got into business right away after college, and I graduated in 1994. And, I was doing this marketing company with my dad, and I was getting up there and doing these presentations and whatnot, and I realized this is what I really like to do. The business, when you think you're selling something to someone that doesn't want it, you're not a salesman. And I knew that about myself. I felt like I was pushing something on somebody that didn't really need it. So I told my dad in 95, I said, all right, I'm going to sell my truck, and with that money, I'm going to move to New York City with my best friend from high school, and I'm going to give this acting thing a shot. I'm going to give myself 5 years, see if I can make something happen. And, with the kind of a mentality that I told you about, within 9 months, with no agent, I was cast on As the World Turns as a series regular.
So that happened in New York.
That happened in New York.
And how long did you stay in New York before?
I was in New York for about 3 years.
3 years. So you'd had experience in some production as well there. But where did you get your sort of acting lessons from? I mean, how did that?
The soap opera. Unfortunately, I learned how to act in front of millions and millions of people. Yeah, if you look at the early stuff of As the World Turns, I mean, I was absolutely horrible. But after the couple years that I was on that show, by the end, I mean, I always call a soap opera boot camp for actors, and it really is, because you're doing 60 pages a day. Now, they're not all your pages, but you're doing an episode a day. And the rate at which you have to learn is through the roof. So if you can pull a soap opera off and do it, relatively well, you're really prepared for other work.
But this is what you really wanted to do. You were following your passion.
I didn't want to do a soap opera per se, but I just wanted to get out there and just get my name out there and just start acting. Yeah. That was my passion. I did a little bit of acting in high school. I did nothing in college. College was all business. And then after college, I just realized, you know what, this is really what I want to do. I want to act.
But when you look back at that business side as well, you're even employing that side right now with your company you've got with your wife. And I guess in so many other ways that you've employed that, nothing's wasted, is it?
No, if you get a business degree, it's never wasted, because anything you're going to be doing, you're essentially running a business. I always knew myself I was going to be self-employed. And I've had many, as an actor, I've got my own corporation to handle that. I have Terra Life Wellness with my wife, which is a holistic health and wellness company. Mm-hmm. I had a beer company for about 5 years called Venice Beach Beer Company. Oh, yeah. And it's a skill that everyone should have.
Absolutely, and it's yeah, I mean, when you getting onto Dawson's Creek, I mean, because it had already been so successful, when you must have sort of, because where was it actually shot?
Wilmington, North Carolina.
Not yet, so it wasn't LA, right? So when you got over there and met some of the other cast members and sort of, because obviously you went through a long process to get that part. It wasn't just a case of, oh, this is the right one. There was many auditions and other screenings as well. But when you eventually got that, did you realize how much that was going to change your life?
No, I didn't think about that too much, just because, you got to focus on the work. You start thinking about things like that, and you're just going to get more nervous, and it's just going to hinder your ability to do what you need to do. But when I got down to Wilmington, I think the first thing that, I think it was Josh Jackson said to me, he goes, your life is going to change in about 3 months. Be ready. And I go, oh, okay. Because it had just happened to him. They just had 10 episodes or 9 episodes air, whatever it was. Yeah. And then Meredith Moreau and I joined them in the second season, which was probably their 10th episode. So it just happened to them, and he's like, get ready, man. You're not going to be able to go anywhere. You're not going to be able to walk down the street, groceries. And he was right. My life completely changed overnight.
Because back in, was it 2000, 90?
When it started?
Yeah.
98.
98, sorry. There was no Netflix. Mm-hmm. People, the main point of consumption of media was on the TV. So, I mean, everyone of the right age would have been, watching that. And in the homes across America and across, other parts of the world as well. Yeah,
and at that point, we didn't even we barely had internet. We were still at 28.8 AOL at that point in 98. Yeah. So it wasn't even worth,
Yeah.
There was no media in that regard in any way. So it was very different back then. I remember sometimes, because you have all the background on set, and we were having problems with people leaking things to the press. Back then, we knew it had to be somebody that was on set. Nowadays, it could be anybody. It just takes one tweet.
It's so different, isn't it?
So different.
I mean, you look at some of these followings that people have nowadays. Like, it's some of them are even bigger than main networks. Yeah. I mean, it's absolutely crazy the power that some people have.
Yeah.
And I think the way we consume media and everything, it's just changed so much. But I think mainstream TV, I think that survived, hasn't it? And that's still, it's a good business as well, I think.
I think so, yeah. It's the business has developed. It's pretty interesting. It used to be the 3 networks, and then it was the 4, and then it was the 5, and then the WB, CW, the UPN, they all merged. And then now we've got all these cable stations, and now Netflix is getting into it, and Amazon, and I think Apple's now getting into it as well. It's a completely different business. There's a lot of material out there. There's a lot of actors working right now, and all kinds of stuff.
Do you ever watch back Dawson's Creek at all? I mean, or do you ever see all the episodes air?
No, I don't. I don't watch it. I mean, every once in a while, it'll be on. Actually, I don't think it's on air. It's only on Hulu right now, I think.
Right.
And it's about to come out on Vudu, I believe.
Yeah.
But when it was on TBS and whatnot a few years back on syndication, yeah, it's every once in a while it'd be.
Yeah.
Or the TiVo would just pick it up because it knew. The TiVo just picks up the stuff that the TiVo knows my name, so it's like it records everything you're in.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you look back at a show like that, that was being of service, wasn't it?
Yeah, Dawson's Creek was being of service. It was, and especially my storyline. We were 5 kids or 6 kids in the beginning that were going through the trials and tribulations of, trying to become an adult, and specifically with my character, dealing with his sexuality in 1998 when it wasn't as accepted as it is now. We're all pretty proud of that particular storyline, just because, I mean, look at it now. Every single show has a gay character, and who cares? It's normal now. And we were a big part of that. We were the first, I was the first gay character in prime television with the, male kiss and all this stuff.
Yeah.
So it was it was scary, but I knew it was something that needed to be done.
Yeah, absolutely it was, and yeah, it's obviously the fans are still out there now as well, a little bit older, but there will be major fans of that show still. And from that show, then it led into the bigger movies then as well, with Final Destination being one of them.
Yeah, I did Final Destination. I think it was my first summer break from Dawson's. And at the time, because of the role that I was playing, I was very adamant about playing kind of a meathead bully kind of character, which Carter Horton was in Final Destination. And I got lucky with that one. I mean, you want to talk about a successful franchise. It's a bummer I got killed in the last frame of the film. But yeah, that was a very successful franchise.
I remember going to the movies and watching Final Destination, the first one, and it was just incredible. It was just such a good movie.
It clings on to you, like on the ride home, you're scared about going through a traffic light, or next time you take a shower, or you're slipping.
It's one of those movies where at the basis of it all, the script was great, and I think with a good script it just works. But I look at some of these movies nowadays and I'm thinking, how did that movie get released? How is that possible? Yeah. And you're like, well, how could they not tell it's a weak? It was such a weak script, but. Do you think it's changed a lot, the industry a bit?
Sure. I mean, it changes every year in all sorts of ways. What I like now is that there's just a much broader base of material that's out there. There's just different kinds of movies, really neat things being made. Movies that are like out of time sequence, like... what would be a good example of that? The first one I think was Memento, right? That was the first one that really went out of series. Pulp Fiction actually might have been another good one. Where it's just the timeline is just all over the place.
Yes.
To me, that's really interesting.
Yes.
It's all about the characters in the film.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot more kind of metaphysical themed films nowadays as well. Yeah. That's definitely, well, you look at the TV shows as well, that's definitely changed.
I haven't seen the show called Deep State, but just the title alone is very interesting to me. My wife and I watched the premiere of New Amsterdam last night. I'm blown away. This show is actually, the main character is basically saying, look, the way we're doing things is wrong. This whole medical establishment is a farce. We need to do the help to the patients first and forget about the billing, forget about the insurance. I mean, they're just going right against something that's a very big machine that a lot of people don't want to touch.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the kind of, would you say that's one of the pulls you have to talk about the medical system as well, the way that they're...
I mean, we could talk about that.
Yeah, I know we're not going to get too deep. I'm just saying it's one of your kind of pet subjects as well, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why my wife and I started Terra Life Wellness. It's because doctors are great. They're great, and they're great for a lot of things. But you ask any doctor, they were not taught nutrition in medical school. If you tell them that inflammation in the body is a major cause of a lot of diseases, they think you're crazy. When I know, And you know that inflammation is the main cause for just about everything. And what's the main cause of inflammation? Stress.
Yeah.
And stress is a thought, manifests as inflammation. So it's, you know, it's that kind of thing that the world is really just starting to learn. I think we're going to start getting a lot healthier because we're going to be preventative. We're going to know that our food is our medicine. Essential oils are another big thing that I think a lot of people are going to start taking. There's a lot of hidden gems in there, like frankincense. You know, there's a reason. There is a reason why one of the three wise men gave frankincense to the baby Jesus with the whole three kings story. It was worth more than gold back then. There's a reason for that we've lost. You know, I know people that have put frankincense on melanoma on their skin, gone in 2 weeks. Cancer, gone. I had a cut actually on my thumb. It's still there a little bit. About a 1/4 inch deep. I cut it last week. My wife's like, put some frankincense on the inside of the pad of the Band-Aid. Put 2 drops on there. Took it off the next morning. 12 hours later, it was completely healed over.
Wow.
Completely healed over, and it was a deep cut.
And what's the website for your business?
TerraLifeWellness.com.
Okay, well, we're just linking that below as well, so that will come
and
up.
you can also link through it through my website, which is kerrsmith.net.
Okay, well, we will include that as well. So acting-wise right now, is there any sort of genre of TV shows that you'd like to go into?
You know, my main interest in my life has been science fiction. I love Star Trek, I love Star Wars, I love all these things. The remake of Battlestar Galactica I thought was a fantastically done show. Yes. A lot of material out there that's been really great over the years. Now, as an actor, 10 years ago, you do a science fiction, you're doing science fiction for the rest of your career. That's just what happens. And it's unfortunate. So, you know, at the time, I didn't want to go there because there were a lot of other things I wanted to do. But now that I'm older and I've done those other things, I want to do what I really love. And I really want to do sci-fi. You know, I really do. I want to tell that story. To me, I feel like I'm at home. You know, walking around a spaceship or whatever. It's fun. You get out there and you explore the universe.
Well, just look at science fiction. Look at the quality of production on the new Star Trek Discovery. I mean, for a TV show, it's movie-like. Yeah? And the way they've been able to reimagine it. Now, whether that's because the people involved in creating that show have had the freedom that Netflix has given them in some sense, it just goes to show what's possible, right? With a quality production. I mean, that's just one example, but you know, there's so many great science fiction shows that have come up and how they're creating them with so well. It's almost like little movies, aren't they? Some of these TV shows now.
Oh yeah, they are. And you could even go the comedic route with sci-fi, like with something like Orville with Seth MacFarlane. That thing is genius. Had a rough start the first 3 episodes. I'm like, this thing hasn't found its voice yet. And then they started making fun of themselves, and it became really good. So I'm excited for that season. Second season.
Well, you've manifested it before, so I'm sure you're gonna manifest it again. And yeah, because I mean, apart from sci-fi, you've worked on all sorts of TV shows, haven't you?
Yeah.
You know, played all sorts of roles. Yeah, you know, I don't. With acting, for me, I was always, you know, so scared of it in the sense because I was like, how am I going to remember the line? How do you remember all those lines?
Oh, that's the easy part.
Really? Wow.
It's muscle memory. The more you do it, the easier it gets.
Yeah.
You know, if I take a month off of work or whatever, you know, I have to relearn that skill to a degree. And the other important thing is it has to be good writing. If it's not good writing, for me, it doesn't stick in my brain. It's a lot harder to memorize.
Is there good writing out there nowadays?
Oh yeah, there's some great writing out there.
Yeah. Even, you know, throughout all your acting or whatever it may be, TV or movies, you always had that calling in you that, you know, you knew there was something more to this reality. Yeah. And I guess it wasn't something, maybe in your 20s, it wasn't something, you know, that you would even talk about, but even, you know, in your 30s, 40s, it's even something that I guess you couldn't share with many people unless they were the right people.
Yeah, when I was in my teens, I would say I definitely became aware that there was just something wrong with the way things were, and I mean Earth, the way we were living our lives. It was like we weren't being told something, or it wasn't the way that it was supposed to be. I wasn't quite sure. But what it did, it got me asking the right questions, which set me on a path of research and reading a lot of books and introspection and going inside. Of course, I did what everybody did in the beginning, which was search out here, go look for it. And you get enough knowledge, you realize it's all inside. And you're right, I did take my 20s off, and I just was a 20-something person, just getting to know themselves.
Yeah.
But when I hit about 29, 30, that's when I really started to do some serious research. And I started to learn quite a bit. I became attracted to channeled material, and specifically. I hit all the big ones, Seth books, Abraham Hicks, Law One, even got into some Cryon and Course in Miracles. I like Dolores Cannon too. I mean, she's, it's a different kind of thing that she had going there with the whole hypnotism, but really, really interesting material that she was able to produce.
Oh, she was a fascinating lady. I met her a number of times, and she was just like the grandma that I never had. You know what I mean? She was just so normal, right? But also, you get her speaking, and it was just, it was just fascinating stuff. And like you say, yeah, the regression. Whether that's a true phenomenon or not, right? I tend to believe there is something there. But even if it's the way for some part of you to come through to give you those memories, so that it helps you in the moment now. Yeah. I find regression very helpful.
Yeah, you're lucky. I really wish I could have met her. She seems like a...
Yeah, you'd have loved her.
Yeah, it just seems really nice.
You'd have loved her. And yeah, so I mean, and how have your folks kind of, I mean, they've always known you've been on this quest, though, haven't they? Kind of thing.
Yeah, I've always been the black sheep within my family. Yeah, if you want to put it that way. I was brought up Christian Methodist. I went to church every Sunday, but I was the guy sitting there looking around, going, I don't know. Does anybody really know why they're here? What are we doing here? Kind of thing. My dad. It's interesting. When I first came across the Law One, I thought he was going to think I was nuts, and he actually read the material a few years back, and he's on board. Like, he gets it.
Yeah.
So my parents very much support what it is I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you something. It's it means a lot, because for me to start talking about all this kind of thing publicly was a very big step for me, personally, and to have my parents and especially my wife, support me in all this has just been tremendously helpful.
Well, yeah, let's just speak about your wife just for a minute. I mean, she's as much into these subjects as you. Mm. And do you think that if she had been a little bit opposite, that it would have maybe not worked out as well as it had? Do you think you needed to be with someone that was aligned? The
reason why Lisa and I are together is because of that fact. It's because we share the same viewpoints. We made an agreement towards one another that we were going to spend the rest of our lives together on this journey of figuring out who we are and becoming better people, better souls, understanding our higher purpose, raising our vibrational energy so that we can, become more conscious and more aware. We're dedicating ourselves to each other. And we both know that you can only go so far in life alone. You have to interact with other souls. It's very, very important for growth. And we realize that, and we've dedicated the rest of our lives to each other for that reason.
That's a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing that.
A pleasure.
And when you look at Hollywood as well, I mean, Jim Kerry's been very outright spoken just recently.
Good artist too.
Oh, great. Oh, he seems like a really nice guy.
He does.
Yeah, he seems like a genuine soul. I think even Keanu Reeves is kind of into these subjects as well.
He is, yeah.
Well, I mean, look what movies he did. I mean, when you look at the Matrix and how that just changed so many lives. Yeah.
That film, when I watched the first one, I was just like, I cannot believe this just got made. This is fantastic. This is people
so ahead of its time.
So ahead of its time. Absolutely amazing film.
And you think, where did that script come from? Did they download the script? Did it just when you look at movies like the Terminator, you hear like where James Cameron said he had this dream that came to him.
Exactly.
Yeah. Look at most of these movies. I bet you it's because we all channel all the time, don't we? So do you think most good scripts that come through, I say good, I'm sure bad scripts can be channeled as well, right? But do you think most good scripts that come through, most movies that have a big impact on a large audience, like The Matrix, have come, even Star Wars, when you look at the whole ethics behind it, you know, the
Yeah.
good and the dark side. Do you think that it's a way of something coming through to give people an alternative perspective, but through movies?
I do. It's like you said, we are all channeling. Most of us are not aware of it, and maybe some of these directors or writers, whomever made these movies, were aware of it or weren't aware of it. But you take guys like Roddenberry and Lucas and Spielberg, and I mean, these guys are pumping out films that are so far ahead of our time and have such a defining message that's so important. You got to think that's coming from a higher source, in my opinion. And a lot of the gadgets, you know, on Star Trek, they're here now. We have them. You know, the iPads, iPhones. A lot of the terminology that they used in the show is now, you know, actually coming into our language now. I don't think we used zero point back then, did we? But
no. There is something I want to ask you as well. It's like, you know, we're going through a great time of change right now, aren't we? There's so much in transparency that's coming out, whether it's in politics, even my field, you know, that it's a time of revealing and transparency right now, and that's happened with Hollywood as well, hasn't it? It's
yeah,
some big changes.
there's some big changes. I mean, it's, in my opinion, it's all due to this time period that we're in right now. Okay, and I really do believe that we are now experiencing, and I don't mean just us, I mean the entire solar system is being bathed in this new electromagnetic kind of energy that's of a higher vibration. We're in that region of our galaxy, because most people don't even really think about this, but we don't just revolve around our sun. Our sun's revolving with the planets around our galaxy. Now, it takes about, I think it's around 225 million years to make one loop. But we're now in this region of space where we're being bathed in a much higher energy, much cleaner. And it's changing our consciousness. It's changing our DNA at that level. And I think it's a reason why all these things are happening in not just the government, but in Hollywood. You know, it's like with the sealed indictments. You know, in any given year, it's like what, 1,000 or 2,000? Isn't it up to like 57,000 or something crazy like that for this year?
Yeah.
So, you know, Hollywood is a subset of that, but it's a good example because, you know, there's some pretty powerful people in Hollywood. There's some pretty dark things that do happen in Hollywood that I've heard of. I've never experienced any of it directly. But, you know, and those people are coming down.
You know, with the platform that you've created for yourself with your career, that gives you certain access straight away to becoming a speaker within this field that could be quite reputable because of the background that you've got, and so that gives you a sort of instant platform, really. And you must have thought about this, like that comes with coming from it from the right perspective, trying to do the right thing that's right for you in your career as well, but also wanting to get this information out there.
Still thinking about it. Yeah, no, I'm aware of all of that. I do have the platform to be able to do this, and I want to use it appropriately. So I'm still figuring out exactly what it is I want to do. I know the message that I want to deliver is one of raising people's consciousness and awareness and to the true understanding of who they really are, you know, and bring back that God-given right of our true identity, you know, and that we are energy, just living a life in this physical body. I don't think a lot of people are aware of that to the degree that they should be, and it's not their fault. It's been taken from them, and I want to help bring that knowledge back. How am I going to do that? I don't know yet.
Yeah. And I think that's all going to become clear to you. Do you know that? I think, you know, it really will. I think it's great what you're doing to come forward, and I think you do it from just being with you right now, from a nice and grounded perspective, you know, and that's important as well. And are you and you're probably very willing to sort of, as you know different things or you learn different truths for yourself, you're probably willing to change and go with that as well.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm a student like anybody else. Yeah, you learn something new and you want to share that, or, you know, something that you may have taught years ago may not resonate with you anymore. You know, it happens. It happens, but that's part of the journey. It's part of the learning.
With the Law of One then, what pulled you into that? How did that journey begin for you?
This is how I found out about the Law of One. I was reading, and I'm sure you're aware of it, it was in 2008, it was at Hidden Hand Forum. Remember that? The guy that was claiming to be part of the family, the structure, but higher up, not even from Earth. And he started quoting the Law of One, and he said in there, someone had asked him in the forum, well, in your opinion, what is the most accurate channel material available to Earth? And he said the Law of One. And I hadn't heard of it. So it was the next thing I read. I read all 5 books in, I would say, a week. I couldn't put it down. And it resonated with me to such a degree. I'll never forget it. The whole time I was reading it, it was like I was tingling. It was just, I was just knowing that this was truth to me. This was real. And it literally changed my life. I mean, ask my wife. She's like, what is going on with you? You're a different person. And, it's taken a couple of years, many years actually, to get to the point where I really want to talk about this stuff in public. But I think people are ready. I think people are becoming more conscious and more aware, and they have an appetite for this kind of information. And for me, it really resonated with me. It's just incredible stuff.
What's the key principles do you think that's really helped you with the Law of One material?
Well, the key principle, and it's something that I've always felt to be truth. The key principle is that we are all one. All things, all beings are one. There is only one of us here. We are all things, all beings, all emotions, all situations. We're unity. We're love, light, light, love. I mean, we are. That's the essence of the Law of One. There's just one person here. Not one person, but one energy.
Yeah, I always like that about the Law of One. I mean, of course, I've met a lot of channelers only because of doing the channeling documentary that I was working on. So, I've come in contact with quite a few. And I've got to say, it's all dependent on where the person is energetically to what teacher that resonates with them, right? So as you've said before, it might be crying, it might be the Edgar Casey teachings, it might there's such a huge range of different things to choose from, and I guess that you could say, well, that makes it confusing. Do you know what I mean? Why couldn't there just be one truth? But I don't think it's like I think when you're on that path of waking up, and if channeled material is something that's on your path, then you'll probably resonate or change as you sort of find out what works for you and what doesn't.
Right. It's not as simple as there's one truth. I mean, in the larger perspective, yeah, there is one truth, but everybody's path is going to be different. And it's just what you said. It really doesn't matter what you believe, as long as you believe something. What resonates with you, if it's the Law of One, if it's the Seth books, if it's Cryon, if it's Dolores Cannon's work, if it's, Abraham Hicks,
yeah,
whatever, if it's the Bible, yeah. It doesn't matter. As long as you believe in something, because that will be your truth.
Yeah, and channeling to me, it's the idea of, it's like a funnel, and you're opening that funnel up, or you're opening the base of the funnel up, and just allowing more of yourself to come through.
Yeah.
Rather, because I think in this reality we're blocked by this veil, in a sense. Do you know what I mean? That is needed there for us to have this experience.
Well, Well, here, in a third density type of planet like Earth, where we are. Yeah, you have that veil that covers our it sits in between the conscious and the subconscious minds. And it's why everybody knows that there's something greater going on, but you just can't put your finger on it. The knowledge is there, but it's just been removed from us in this particular incarnation. And there's reasons for that. The Law of One says that the reason for that blanket there is because so that we can experience a life of free will on a planet of duality. In other words, to have experience for the one creator. Because if you think about it, if you're everything, if you're the one creator, and let's just take this as broad perspective as you can get, and you consist of everything, you're this infinite intelligence, you can't possibly understand what it is you are. There's nothing that you can throw yourself up against to make a comparison, because, well, that's you too. Imagine how frustrating that would be. So what is your first desire? Your first desire is to know yourself. And the only way you can do that is to paradoxically split yourself up in all these little bits of pieces of individualized consciousness, us, so that you can run around this universe that you created, having these experiences, so the one creator can understand what it is through those experiences. And here on Earth, because it's a planet of free will, you have, everything is love. That's all there really is. But we've created this thing called fear, which is the opposite of love. So now we can go in, and run around Earth and experience all these things that we would consider bad, but they're not really bad. They're just experiences so that the creator can understand what it is by experiencing what it is not. And that's what we're doing here. That's our purpose. And we're all co-creating this experience together by our own thoughts and our own belief systems and our own emotions.
Thank you so much for that explanation as well. No, that's again, I resonate with that explanation, and that is said in lots of different material as well. It's a universal truth. I think
it's everywhere you look, and particularly with the channel material. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the reasons why I love channel materials. If you believe that some kind of energy is speaking through someone else, if you get past that, the amount of information, as long as you're getting it from a positively or a loving being, the amount of information that you can acquire, it gets through the veil, and you can understand things better.
Yeah, absolutely, and we'll go into some of the law of one principles as well, but in a bit more detail. But it's all about, it's not about escaping this reality and trying to, because I believe that it's so important, that we stay grounded in this reality. Do you know what I mean? Like, just because you've come across the law of one, you're not going to stop acting. Do you know what I mean? And
right.
Just become a guru, and sit there and recite the law of one. You're using the law of one as a way to live your life and come across to other people with that.
For me, that particular material sets up the grid, or the grid of understanding, I guess is what you would call it. For me, in my mind, I can understand what's going on. It tells me what my journey has been, where it's going to go, but it's all based on my choices. It's not predetermined for me. I can choose which path I would like to take, and I like that. It's very comforting to me.
It just seems to me that, yes, obviously you're going to be able to spread the word of this on a larger scale, but also, I don't know, you have to keep grounded doing the work that you're doing with this. As you said at the beginning of this interview, you were scared to come out of the spiritual closet, in a sense, right? So, you'll always keep it grounded with what you're doing, and I think that's important to show people that groundedness.
Yeah, it is. You can't get too far out there with all of this, but here's the thing, the message in all of this, in any material, really, is the same. And it's roughly the same. It's very simple to understand. Just love thy neighbor. You've heard that one before, haven't you?
Yeah.
If you can stay in a constant state of gratitude, that puts you in a state of love. It raises your vibration and makes you more conscious and more aware. That's all you need to do. You love everything. You try and stay in a constant state of gratitude. I mean, you see a beautiful tree, just in your mind, just say, man, thank you, that's beautiful. And forgiveness, that's the third thing I think is really important. Those two, gratitude and forgiveness, leads to love, leads to a higher vibration, leads to a lot of learning and a happy life.
Yes, and I like what you say, keeping it simple. But and I guess you're tested quite a bit, like we all are.
Every day.
Yeah.
I'm a yo-yo. That's what I say to my wife. I'm a yo-yo. One day I'm feeling great. I'm in full gratitude. I'm loving this. I'm loving that. I'm loving everything. And the next day I wake up and I'm like, it's gonna be one of those days. And you know what? It will be one of those days because I just said that. We have this little plaque in our bedroom, and it says, it's the first thing I see every morning, and it says, one small positive thought in the morning can change your entire day. And it's true.
So true. It's so true.
It's so true.
Yeah. And do you and your wife both read on the law of one, or is that just yourself more?
That's just more me. We have the same belief system, but no, she doesn't.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And I think because obviously that, the law of one, the material is quite deep, right?
Yeah.
Right. So how do you, obviously, because we don't want anything to become a religion in a sense where it's the only truth, and are you kind of picking out the good bits that work for you in there, and sort of leaving the rest, or how are you?
No, there's other material actually that says law one is the most accurate. It's roughly 90% correct. Things like that. I think, okay, well, what in there is not really right. I mean, I just keep an open mind with all of it, all of the information. I mean, are there things in the law of one that scare me? Yeah, there are. There are a few things that really scare me. Is it truth? I don't really know. I just go with my gut. I use my own discernment, and I just kind of go with it. But in general, the law of one for me, I've resonated the most with that material for some reason.
Yeah, and I think I've probably said this either before the interview or in the interview, that we can all channel, we all can bring through our greater part of ourselves, and I think. But there are great artists and there are not so good artists, and it's like a channeler. There are great channelers, if I'm just, and there are just people that are just getting their normal daily bits of download that they get in their life, and sometimes they're not even listening to what's coming through sometimes. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that we don't have to go with any channel material really. We can be our own material, but I guess maybe sometimes we don't trust ourselves enough that we can bring that. All answers lie within.
And that's a big message that I personally have been getting through channel. I don't channel personally. Well, at least I'm not aware of it. But
when you do your character, when you're on set, are you not channeling something?
To a degree,
yeah.
There's always, you can't get away from yourself too much. There's always a part of Kerr that's going to be in every role that I play. Otherwise, it's just not going to be. It's not going to be real. But what I keep getting told in channeling sessions, for me in particular, and I think you can pretty much apply this to anyone, is that you need to trust your own intuition. You need to trust that you already know these things. You're just trying to remember them, kind of thing. It's exactly what you just said. That's why I wanted to bring it up. And I think that's a really important message, because all the answers, we already have all the answers, and they're all in here. That's why I'm a huge advocate of meditation every day, as much as you can do it. It connects you with your higher self, or whatever it is you believe that energy is. And that's the place when I meditate where I'm home. I'm home. That is the best way to describe it.
Yeah, and that meditation could be, if people don't want to meditate like formally, then maybe it could be going for a walk. It could be some routine that puts you in a space of something that you need to do just to, ground yourself in a sense.
Walking, that's a perfect example. Walking meditation is a very effective means of calming your mind and connecting with spirit. If you're one of those people that needs to be out in nature and around trees and water, which my wife and I are, it can be a beautiful thing to do that. It's like every time you put your feet on the ground, imagine just flowers blooming around your feet. It's that kind of experience that you can have in a walking meditation.
Okay, so right now, it's very much about the law of one,
right?
But what if that there's something else that's on the cards for you in the future that was just that you needed this now to open you up to where you were going to go? Yeah.
I mean, I'd be open to that. It's like I said, we all have our own journey. If some point along the way, I don't think the polarity concept in the law of one makes any sense, or I've come across some other material that resonates with me more to a degree, the belief, then I'll change. I don't know. I mean, in terms of scripts, I've always taken things that always resonate with me, things that I think would be fun to play. I haven't always done movies that I think are going to be a good message. That's not a good message. These two back here, you can't see them, but My Bloody Valentine and Forsaken, those aren't good messages. They promote fear, but I wasn't in that space then. I'm more selective with the things that I do these days. And I would love to do movies about consciousness and helping people, just become more aware.
Yeah, it's a funny subject, that, isn't it? Because I mean, I was with Dee Wallace, and we touched upon this as well, that she likes to make horror movies. Yeah?
Sure.
And she channels, right? And you would really like Dee. You would. She's a really nice person, right? And she doesn't see a conflict in that at all, right? Because it's all part of creation. It's all part of, why when we become spiritual, is it then we have to deny certain parts of ourselves? Where does that come from?
I remember I was in a Meisner class, which is an acting technique, and this is years ago, and I was really, really concerned, and I was talking to my teacher, I'm like, look, if we're really doing our job here as actors, then we're really in this, we're believing it, and I'm having a thought process. Let's say I'm doing a horror movie and I'm killing somebody. Well, I'm thinking that I'm doing that. That's not good for me in life, because then I'm going to create that kind of, situation. He's like, shut up. All right, it's only for a little bit. How real it's going to be is up to you. I'm like, well, yeah, but if I really want to be a good actor, I've got to believe I'm doing this, or if it's happening to me in the scene. So I still have a little bit of conflict with that. Thoughts create things, in my opinion. So if I'm a serial killer, which I've played many times, how does that manifest in my real life, or does it at all?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And it's a great question. It really is. Or is it just all one big game? And actually, everything that we get to experience here is so important to taking that back with us to where we have come from and go back to. That this is just Source having an experience to know itself.
Well, it is this, and you hit it right on the head. This is one big game, but what do I want to manifest in this game? Because to us, it's very, very real, because that veil's there.
Yes.
Yeah.
When you look back at what you have done and where you're going to, yeah, sure, you're bound to change what feels right for what resonates, what doesn't resonate. With the law of one, then, obviously, what would you say? If you could sum it up for us just a little bit as well, what is the law of one in sort of stages of learning it? Because obviously, when you read that book for the first time, it is an in-depth read, isn't it?
It's a tough read.
Yeah.
It's very thick. And the way that the material comes through, Carla, the language is it's very strange. There are some pages I have to spend a half an hour on before I start to understand it. It's just the way that it is. But I still find it really interesting. But you talking in terms of densities? Is that what you're asking?
Well, yeah. There's so much to it. I mean, there's the densities. There's the wanderers. There's so many chapters dedicated to different ways of being of service as well. And
densities would be the grid that I was talking about. I can briefly jump around on that, I think. So it basically, the material says that there are 8 densities, okay, 1 through 8, and as a consciousness, we start out at 1, and 1 is when basically a planet is being formed. You've got air and you've got fire, literally forming water and earth, and forming the water and earth gives us the structure and the game board, if you will, for other entities, plant life, animals, things like that, to evolve and walk around on, which would be second density. And each one of those 2 densities right there is about, it's like 6 billion years. It's a ridiculous amount of time. So then you have third density, and to be in third density, you need to be self-aware, and that's where we are now. We're at the end of third density, moving into fourth. Fourth density is all about learning the ways of love. Fifth density is all about learning the ways of wisdom and balancing it with love. Sixth density is all about unity. Seventh density they call the gateway density. We don't know a lot about it because it's so close to the creator. And then eighth density is rejoining that infinite intelligence, which we call God or the creator. So that's the journey, and that takes however long you want it to take. It's billions of years. The interesting thing about third density is that according to the law of one, we need to make a choice. We need to either be in service to others or in service to self. You're either a full-blown narcissist to the nth degree, or you're someone that more than half of their time is thinking and doing things for other people, knowing that the law of one states that there's only one of us here, so if I help you, I'm just helping myself. So if you understand that concept, being in service to others is very simple. So in third density, they split. And the negative and the positive polarity both have their own fourth density, both have their own fifth density, and then they rejoin in the density of unity, which is 6. So that's the whole grid right there. First, second, third, choices made, fourth, fifth, come back together in 6, 7th, rejoin the infinite creator. That's the grid of our journey according to Ra.
And even that's quite, an amazing bit of channeled material. Just even talking about the density, and I was just thinking back to what you were saying as well. That that there is meant to be some distortions in the material, and I'm thinking, well, maybe those distortions are there so that we don't get it allows us to have our own discernment on what's right and what's wrong. What feels right about some of the material and what doesn't feel right.
Well, the first distortion, there's 3 major distortions. Here's the thing with distortion. It's interesting that you use that term because everything that gets away from the one energy that we call the infinite, the creator, is a distortion. So you and I are distortions because we're not totally joined. Everything is a distortion. Thoughts are distortions. Experiences are distortions. But there's the first distortion, which is called the distortion of free will. And interestingly enough, that was the first thought this entity had in saying, oh, I want to experience myself. Well, I need to be able to give people choice. That means I need to be able to give people free will. And it's that choice that gives us the ability to have these journeys and have these experiences for the one creator. It just all comes full circle. And the whole time we feel like we're these separated, individuated pieces of consciousness. But that's the paradox. We're not. And that's what the law of one teaches, is that at the greater perspective, we are one thing, and that is it. And I think for me, it's a very cool concept, and it makes a lot of sense. If you can pull your brain, remember that opening shot in Contact, where they pull out of the iris of the young Jodie Foster, and they just keep pulling back. They pull out of the city, out of the globe, out of the solar system. We roll past the moon, out of the solar, out past Pluto, and just keep going and going and going and going and going. And they do it forever. Radio, TV goes away. Radio sounds go away. We're past, even the first broadcasts. And then they get as far away, and it just makes us look smaller than a grain of sand. And then you think, man, the problems I had yesterday, from that perspective, the problems I had what does that mean? Does it have any weight? Does it have to it at all? I mean, the planet itself is smaller than a grain of sand, yet what's going on in my own body and my own mind is so important, right? And then the shot continues and it zips back in and goes back into the eyeball. It's just, for me, that shot just sums it all up, puts everything into perspective.
I've always thought along those lines as well, that when you look at the Earth from afar, just even in our own system, it just puts everything into perspective, how small we are, really, and how much we don't understand.
Yeah.
And when you start getting into questions of the infinite universe and what was there before, these are totally unanswerable.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Completely.
And it always makes me, when I come across material that goes into ideas of what's out there in the system, of the solar system, or whatever else, I find that stuff fascinating. I really do. But then I think to myself, okay, yeah, but what's going? Is that an excuse to not worry about what's going on here now? And we're always looking up there thinking something's going to save us, yeah. But actually, it's all about this present moment now, isn't it? Our issues are here right now, not really about what's out there sometimes.
What's out there, I believe, is waiting for us to save ourselves. They may be helping a little bit, nudging here and there. A lot of it is through channeling. A lot of it is through dreams. Yeah. That's how a majority of it is really happening, and just making us. I don't think that I do truly believe there is a galactic system out there of many, many different species that we are a part of but aren't aware of it yet, because we're still killing ourselves. We don't have the consciousness, the level of consciousness required to be aware of all the other species out there. I believe they're here, but they're just not showing up because they're afraid. I mean, well, you know.
Well, I'm with you on that. I just cannot see disclosure ever happening. That's my own truth.
Until we become conscious enough to be able to handle it.
But that's different. Is that going to happen in our lifetime? We've been at this game for a long time.
I know. But this is a very special time right now because of this new energy that we're being bathed in, right? We're supposed to be, in terms of the law of one, we're supposed to be moving. Gaia herself has already moved into fourth density. As a surface population of this Earth, we're still in third density, most of us. And it's causing a lot of problems. It's a difficult transition for Gaia. That's why we're seeing, more earthquakes, more volcanoes, these crazy hurricanes, The law of one says that because the planet is in fourth density and the species in third density, quote, it causes entropy and unused heat, which is manifesting in these, catastrophes. So it could be a very difficult time for us, but in the end, it's all going to be for the greater purpose of raising our consciousness. Because I want to know what's going on out there, According to Ra, this is an interesting thing. According to Ra, in the Milky Way galaxy, there are approximately 250 billion stars, 250 billion suns, okay? And then Don Elkins asked Ra in the material back in the early 80s, okay, so what doesn't matter how aware, it could be a plant or it could be, Ra itself. How many planets out there surrounding these 250 billion stars have a conscious awareness on them, some kind of species? And Ra says 67 million. Now that's a very small number in terms of a galaxy, but relative to us, that's a huge, huge number. Don took it even further and said, okay, well, how many planets out there have a conscious awareness where they're right in the same level of evolution as we are here on Earth? And Ra said 27%. That's 18 million planets, 18 million species out there that are going through the same trials and tribulations that we are right now. That's a lot. So to think that we are alone in this universe, to me, is such a ridiculous concept. You can put that one in the folder with the flat Earth, put it in the circular file. That's where I am on that.
I completely agree with you there. That we're definitely not alone. No, far from it. And but I've just, for myself, I've just not wanted to get lost too much in, trying to. Everyone's on a different path, right? If I went to, and there's researchers in these type of subjects for ufology, some really good ones as well, right? But I always try to remind myself, well, as much as there's something out there, what's happening here right now? Because,
way more important.
Yeah. Don't, because we can sometimes get so distracted, can't we?
Oh yeah.
And there's so many distractions sometimes, and I'm all about trying to make this present moment the most loving and the most positive and best it can be as well.
I respect that and agree with it. I mean, you're right. There are so many topics we can talk about outside of this world, but the more important ones are here, especially in here. With consciousness, really, that's where it is.
And that's what the law of one talks about as well, is about improving that side of us and how to do that.
Yeah.
And what are some of the ways it says to do that as well?
Well, I've discussed them. Gratitude is a major one.
Yeah.
Major one, because if you can be in gratitude, you can raise your vibration, which is what the law of one is really all about, is becoming more conscious and on a physical level. That's actually raising the vibration of the molecules of the atoms in your body, from one density to the next, and graduating from one to the other.
One of the things I wanted to ask you about as well is wanderers. What is the term of wanderers in the law of one?
You can probably lump wanderer in with starseed, light worker, indigo children. In my opinion, you can, but a wanderer is a specific term from the law of one. And Ra says that a wanderer is usually some energy that is of a fifth density, much, much more evolved than we are, that chooses to answer a calling, like say you were meditating and saying, I want to know more, I need to know more, blah, blah. They would decide to come back and incarnate on Earth, in third density. Now, you can look at this as incredibly brave or incredibly foolish, depending on what your perspective is, because if you do that, even though you've been through millions of years of evolution ahead of where they're incarnating back in, they can get trapped because of the veil, because they will forget who they are to a degree. And the whole goal is to remember that you are a wanderer so that you can help raise the consciousness of the people on Earth. And there are a lot of wanderers on Earth right now. The risk is you can get karmically involved, not remember who you are, and now you're back down there again. You're back down here with us. And you got to go through the whole process again. And it might be a different process. You might go the negative route instead of the positive. So, the Law of One says that in 1981, Don asked Ra this question, and they said that there were 65 million wanderers on Earth in 1981. So it's thought that there are many, many more now, given the special time that we're in.
Wow, that's even back then, that's a lot of people.
A lot.
I had no idea that the number could have been that high, but yeah.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
There are a lot of numbers, there are a lot of figures in the Law of One, and I think the reason there is because the universe is largely mathematical. It really is. There's a math there that withstands all concepts, really.
Mm.
When I was a kid and when Lisa was a kid, we both had this thought quite frequently, and maybe you have too, what if there was nothing? You ever try and wrap your mind around that?
Yeah, and for nothing for me is always like in my head it's like a white color. I'm like, no, it's not white, and it's not see-through, so it can't be black. It can't just be blackness. What is nothingness? And the whole idea that we can't answer it maybe goes to show that we're not supposed to.
I think it's beyond our reach to understand what that is. But interestingly, for me at least, nothingness I think would feel a lot like everythingness. If that makes sense. If there's nothing there, grab that concept. But if you're everything, there's nothing outside of yourself. So to me, that kind of feels like the same concept. So let's take the concept of infinity. Let's imagine that there is this infinity in the beginning, and at some point this infinity becomes aware of itself. And what the Law of One says is that when that infinity became aware, you can now consider it as an intelligent infinity. And that intelligent infinity is what everybody calls God. It's what the Law of One calls the Creator. It's that energy that's in everything. It's everywhere. Everything that exists is part of that infinite intelligence. And when it became aware, it started to set up the game because it wanted to know what it was. We already discussed this. And to do that, it set up three laws, the law, which are called distortions: free will, love, and light. Free will to give everybody these individuated pieces of consciousness that it would eventually make, the ability to have experiences, okay? It created the distortion of love, which you could define as an intelligent energy, which allowed galaxies to form, which allowed planets to form, which allowed us to form. And it all formed through the third distortion, which is light, because light is the foundation, it's the building blocks of everything that exists in our universe, right? Everything is made of light. I don't think we've quite figured that one out yet. But according to Law of One, everything is made of light. And because of the light, we have all this physicalness that we can jump around on as these individuated pieces of consciousness and have all these crazy experiences that the Creator is actually having. It's an incredibly complicated thing to explain, but once you get it, it's like, man, this just makes so much sense. It's just one big game. I used to... 10 years ago, when I talked to my friends and whatnot about this stuff, I would start off with the idea of saying, this is all an illusion. And my friends would go, well, you're crazy. Illusion. What does that mean? Here's what it means. If you take this sofa, right, and we just jam it underneath a microscope, and we just keep going deeper and deeper and deeper, we're going to start to see molecules, then we're going to start to see atoms. Right? Then we're going to start to see neutrons and quarks and just going smaller and smaller and smaller. if you take like a atom, like the nucleus of an atom, and then you take that ring, the electron ring, and you blow that nucleus up to the size of, say, the sun. Well, that electron ring is somewhere out like Pluto. That means the inside of an atom is 99.99% space. Yet to us, all this seems solid. It's only because we've pulled out like the contact film shot to such a degree that it has become solid to us. That to me is incredibly fascinating. Mm-hmm. But all this really is some kind of physical illusion.
With real consequences.
With real consequences, yes, because we're inside of it. It's just, like attracts like. I mean, that's just how it works. And it's how the whole thing works. I mean, if your energy is not of a specific vibration, you're going to exist in the appropriate vibration that matches you. There's nothing you can do about that. You know, third density doesn't gel with fourth density. That's why we can't see fourth density. It just exists in a different realm, if you want to call it. It's just the molecules and the atoms are vibrating much faster than we are. Faster than the speed of light, according to Dr. Dewey Larson. But you know, once you jump over that speed of light, you're in a whole different realm. Still existing in physical, but it's a little bit different. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You ever read the book Flatland?
No, I didn't know.
I cannot remember the author's name, but it's a very interesting book. The book, I'm using the example to explain perception and how if we can't see outside the box, we don't know it's there. So what this book does, and this book's really about social structures and whatnot, it's not really about this, but it's a book about two-dimensional beings. So just take, for instance, we live on a sheet of paper, but we have no height to us. I know it's hard to imagine. We have no height to us in any way. You can go left, right, back 360 degrees in any direction you want, but the concept of height, you're unaware of it. So let's imagine a three-dimensional object blows through this 2D world, and you're just a dot on this piece of paper, and I drop a basketball through this two-dimensional plane. So from your 2D point of view, when I start lowering this basketball, the first thing you're going to see is a point, just a point. And as I lower the ball and we get to the full diameter of the ball, what you're going to see is a point that stretches in a line until it gets to the full diameter. And as the ball goes through the piece of paper, it's going to shrink back down to a point and it's going to disappear. So from the 2D perspective, what just happened? Something appeared out of nowhere, became one thing, became something else, went back to the first thing and disappeared. Complete magic. You pull back to the third density perspective, well, I just dropped a ball through a piece of paper, big deal. Do you know what I mean? So it's all about perception. And it's a good example to use when trying to explain what fourth density might be like, because we don't experience it. You know what I mean? It's a really fascinating book.
That is fascinating. That is, and these, you know, for some people listening to this for the first time, it's difficult for them to. Well, you know, it's a different type of reality. It's a different way of looking at reality completely, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, but you know, I do feel that having skimmed over some of the law of one, it is, you know, if we're going to talk about it as a channel material, it is grounded. It's, you know, you can take stuff in there and you can apply it into your life now, most definitely.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how many books was the Law of One? Was it?
Well, it was 103, 106. I think it was 106 sessions total that they did. They crammed those into 4 books that were published around 84, 85, somewhere in there. And then they left a lot of material out that was of personal nature, maybe some more like UFO types of stuff, things that weren't really appropriate for what they wanted to, you know, get across. So in '98, I think Jim and Carla decided to publish a 5th book, which contained all the material that wasn't in the original 4. So to answer your question, 5 books.
What was the one thing in there that really blew your mind? I'm sure there was quite a bit.
I mean, all of it blew my mind. There was one thing in there. It was in the 5th book, I believe. It was a UFO subject. You know, Don Elkins was big on UFOs,
yes,
so
he was. Yeah.
he asked a lot of questions in there about UFOs, which Rod in particular cared for because he wanted this to be on, you know, about consciousness. But there were some answers given, and one of them was, you know, does our government have any reverse engineered spacecraft. And Ross said, oh yeah, there's I think he said there's something like 730 of them. I don't know the exact number that are already built underground. They're like one man. Some of them are remote. But he said a lot of the disc-shaped crafts that you see in the atmosphere are actually your own. That was a piece of information that I went, what? What? You got to be kidding me. So whether it's true or not, who knows?
And whether it's true or not, who knows? I mean, that, you know, is that part of the distortion? Is that true? Does it, you know? But as things are far out there, yeah, okay, but that's kind of fun, isn't it? To think that that might be possible. Obviously, you know, doing this work as well, you know, you've looked at all sorts of other ideas, like, you know, is there a deep state? Is there an Illuminati kind of thing? Does any of that stuff really matter to the everyday folk, do you think? Does it control us? Because I feel that, you know, I've still been able to manifest the things I want to manifest, but I haven't got addicted to those type of subjects.
You know, when I first became aware of what was really going on with the deep state and everything, I became very angry, as most people do. How could this be happening? How could I have the wool pulled over my eyes to the nth degree? How could this have been going on for thousands of years? You're born into this system that you're not even aware of because you believe it to be your true reality, which it is. To answer your question, I think it's important that we become aware of it, but don't get too tangled in it. Because I think this kind of disclosure is going to be very important in raising our vibrations. I really do. We can't get to that degree without destroying that system that's in place, and I don't know how we're going to get rid of that system without everybody knowing about it. Maybe we can. I don't know.
Yeah. No, nor do I.
I mean, you know, there's a lot of whistleblowers out there that are saying this is the time you're going to start seeing a lot of disclosure, and I've seen the drip stuff. I really think that we're going to see some crazy things that have happened a long time ago, but we're going to get the information out there. In terms of things that are going on in Antarctica, you know, old ancient civilizations that have been there. The interesting thing, and Emery Smith said this, is that the interesting thing is that Gaia herself is going to be the one making the disclosure, because poles are melting, the ice is melting, and it's all of a sudden we're going to be like, oh, here's a civilization we didn't know anything about. What's this all about? Oh, this is going to change our history. Okay, well, let's digest this for a couple of years. And then the ice will melt some more, and well, we got a couple of spaceships down here. I don't know how man, these things are 500,000 years old. Well, we better digest this information. That could be the way this is going to go down.
Who knows? But it does sound like something out of The Thing.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Love that movie.
It's a great. Even the prequel to that thing was really good as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I mean,
it's a part.
Yes.
I think it's a part of it, but it's a small part.
It's a small part, yeah. And, you know, as anybody in my field actually, you know, gone out to Antarctic and boots on ground and researched, is there anything there? Well, the answer is it's such an evil, it's such a brutal bloody place. You know, it's barely, you know, it's not made for human being life. Do you know what I mean? So
but it wasn't always like that.
No.
No, it was a paradise at one point.
Absolutely, yes. When before any pole shift, if that did happen, which I think it's very possible that it did. But yeah, what is down there? Well, there's lots of theory, but
there's a lot of theory.
We don't know, do we?
No, we don't.
I mean, Buzz Aldrin was down there at some point. There's been some famous people go down there, but then there are, you know, US have their own scientific research centers down there because it's a great place to, you know, have some science experiments and stuff. So yeah, I think in all of what we've spoken about as well, I think, and even on your journey, is, and this accounts for everyone, is discernment. Where, you know, how do we internally discern what feels right or wrong? How would you look at that?
I've been asked this question before, and I just, you know, I've always been told to trust my gut. You know, whether my gut is accurate or not, I really don't know, but I'm learning to really trust that instinct. And when I meet somebody, I think I have a pretty good idea of whether or not they're lying to me, whether or not they're telling the truth. You know, there's things out there that I believe and use, like, you know, kinesiology. I think is a really interesting It's a really interesting subject, and it can tell whether truth is present or if it's not. Well, I think the object here is to get away from that fear and to understand that fear is purely a concept in your own brain. That's it. It doesn't really truly exist. I think when people figure that out, it's hard. It's hard. You have your days and you're like, there's a billion shades of fear. It could be grief, could be anything. It could be just being scared, whatever. But, we all experience that on a daily basis. And the only thing that I do is when you have like a negative thought or a fearful thought or something like that, one, recognize that that's happening right there on the spot. And if you recognize it, then you have the ability to replace it with something positive. And if you can continually do this throughout the day, that's a big leap. That's a huge thing. The human brain has something like 60,000 thoughts a day. 99% of them are useless and probably in fear. And that's why we're in the existence that we are right now. But if we could catch them when they happen, replace them when it happens with a positive thought, imagine how things would change, because we'd all be thinking positive thoughts all day long.
What would you like to see the world become? What would be, is it perfect just the way it is right now?
From my perspective, it's not perfect. From the greater perspective, it is 100% perfect, always will be, always has been. Right?
Great answer.
But I want things differently. I think we all do. We've got to stop killing each other. We've got to stop fighting. We've got to stop having these negative thoughts. We've got to learn to live together in a harmonious way. I know we can do it. It's on our path. The question is, how far up the path is it? Is it the next step, or is it 20, 30, 40, 200 years away? I just don't know. The key point is, it's up to us. And the faster we wake people up and help people become more conscious, the more loving we're going to become, and the faster we're going to get to that step.
And do you think those that aren't on a spiritual, aren't tending to their soul in a sense, aren't gardening their soul while they're here, just to even, come from some of those perspectives as you've said, or even to come from the perspective of, let me just, even to know that the I am is coming from something greater than the brain, but that's got to come from them really to feel that. But by not tending to the soul or gardening it, do you think that when we cross over, that it's a more difficult process for us, for our soul in a sense, that we haven't looked at it after it here, basically?
I think that if in one incarnation we ignore or don't learn from the catalysts that I believe we ourselves put in place in any specific life to learn certain things and progress along, consciously. If we don't learn from those, I think that we're just going to, when we die, we're going to be like, oh man, why didn't I see that? All right, let's do it again. And that's exactly what I think happens. You reincarnate and you do it again until you get it. And that's the whole point. Is to learn these lessons and to get back to that infinite intelligence that we're all part of. And the faster you can do that, it doesn't really matter how fast you do it. We're all on our own path. I know people personally in my own life that live the law of one and they don't even know what it is. They have no idea. So you don't have to be aware of this material in order to live a life like this.
Isn't that interesting? You see that reflection in them already, yet they haven't named it this or come across it. Yeah, they're embodying the whole aspects of what it's saying.
Yeah, they're just living their truth, what they believe to be their truth, and it's good. They're gratuitous people, they're friendly, they forgive, they're always happy. These kinds of people resonate this energy out from their body, and it affects you. When you walk into a room and there's somebody that's really positive and awesome, I can't remember his name, maybe you can help me. He's a professor, a geology professor. He is the one that came up with the concept that the Sphinx is much older than it is because of the erosion. Yes, Roosh. It's hard to pronounce.
I know. He's got curly kind of hair.
Curly, frizzy hair.
Dr. Robert Schoch.
Yes. I met him at Contact in the Desert this year.
He's a cool guy, yeah.
He and his wife, and I did a panel, Jimmy Church's panel with him. Sitting next to that man Now, I've seen him on Ancient Aliens 100 times. But meeting him and sitting next to him, the energy that was coming off of that man and his wife was unbelievably gentle, loving. It was incredible. I even said it to him. I said, I've never sat next to anybody that resonates like you do. It's incredible. And he knew exactly what I was talking about. And he said, thank you so much for saying that. So you know when you walk into a room that there's a kind of person like that. Just like you know when you walk into a room and you get a bad vibe. You know? Mm-hmm. We have this sixth sense, if you will.
Yeah.
It's very, very interesting.
Well, it's just our soul talking back to us. It's something talking back, isn't it? And you know, I mean, we get so defined by labels, don't we? Like, oh, well, this is called this, that's called that.
It drives me crazy.
Yeah.
That's how the human brain works. Got to put a label on it, put it in a category, or I'm not going to understand what it is. It drives me nuts.
So you're quite happy to say goodbye to the labels.
Please.
Good. Yeah. And I mean, that's where you're at. That's cool. But I'm kind of past that as well. Do you know what I mean? Just the whole label thing, and that, you know, there's so much information out there right now. Like when you've got QAnon and all these other things, I really don't. I just don't know if I buy everything, and especially with QAnon as well.
Yeah, the Q stuff really has my wheels spinning too. I don't know. I have a friend that's really heavily into it. I don't follow it directly because it's just too much. You know, I don't have time for all that. But he gives me the highlights, and it's interesting. Some of the correlations there are quite interesting, but do I believe it? I just don't. I don't know. Is it a part of, you know, is it a legitimate part of this disclosure process? I don't know. I really don't. And
you've met some of the names in this. I mean, you've met Corey Good, you've met David Wilcock, Emery Smith. There's a few of the people within the consciousness community that you've met.
Oh yeah. I've had a blast getting to know these guys. They're really interesting people. It's been a lot of fun. Yeah, but I mean, it's, you know, the discussions you have with them it's so interesting. It's just, it is. But I got to tell you, I'm very grateful that they're in my life to a degree. It's been a very, very interesting year for me.
Have you come across any of the spiritual gurus like Deepak or Eckhart Tolle?
No, I've never met like Chopra or Tolle. No. New Earth, I mean, I remember the first time I read that book, I just cried because it was just resonated as truth to me. Yeah. I mean, things like that, I love when I come across a book where I just get emotionally attached to it. Yeah. It's really, really amazing. No, not as much.
Not yet.
Or not yet. Not yet, but this has been a very interesting... This whole journey publicly started for me last February of 2018. And I was, for a very long time, feeling this force, this push, this pull, whatever you want to call it. It didn't feel like it was me, but it was just saying, you need to go this route. And I just was fighting it. I'm not ready to do this publicly. I don't, you know, and one day in February I was meditating and I just said to the universe or my higher self or whatever it is, I said, look, all right, I'm going to stop fighting this. I'm going to stop swimming upstream. I'm just going to go with the flow, which is so important, of the universe and just see what happens. And I felt this weight just right off of me. I knew no one in that spiritual ufology community, whatever you want to call it. In 2 weeks, from that meditation, I had done Fade to Black with Jimmy Church and Coast to Coast AM, the two most prominent radio shows in that community. Now you tell me the universe was not waiting for me to get my act together. Yeah. And from there, I met guys like David Wilcock and Corey Good and Emery Smith. And so anyway, it's been one thing after another. You know, because of those interviews, I've been able to start lecturing on the Law of One and other things. And it's just, you know, my wife and I started Terra Life Wellness to help people really, you know, figure out. It's mostly about diet, but diet, there's reasons behind diet. There's what we call primary foods, which are, relationships and career and physical fitness, things like that. And spiritualities too is one of them. And those are really the underlying causes of why you eat what you eat and how you eat and all this stuff. So we're here to help people with those kinds of things. Well, my direction is definitely going to be more the spiritual side of things. I mean, I definitely have an interest in ufology and all that, but it's not something that I want to, preach.
Yeah.
Have you ever interviewed Kyle Keese?
Sorry, Kyle Keese.
Yeah, I think he calls himself the spiritual comedian. He's got a book or two out.
I think I've heard of him.
I watched a YouTube video on him the other day, and it was with him, and I can't remember her name, but it was the woman that actually had a near-death experience, cured her cancer, came back. I forget her name. Interesting story, but it was a video between the two of them. The way that he explained spirituality, and I can't quote him because I can't remember as well, but I'm watching this and I'm going, man, this guy is a great speaker. Everything that he was saying, the analogies he was using, just so well thought out and funny.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to be able to do. I want to be able to give a presentation in that manner where people walk out of that room and go, this is going to stick with me. That was really, it was entertaining and it was informational, and I don't want to stand up there and just read slides and say, this person said this. No. I want people to feel. I want people to feel my enthusiasm with this subject matter. And this guy did this. So maybe I need to get a hold of him.
Well, Kerr Smith, I've thoroughly enjoyed our conversation today. Just thank you so much for allowing me to come on location to film with you, and for just being so honest with me as well. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thanks for making the trip out here, Kevin. I really appreciate it. Had a good time.
Thank you, brother.